Welcome in, everybody. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel. This is On Texas Football. Steve Sarkisian just moments ago in front of the media. CJ talking about the Longhorns game on Saturday against Mississippi State. Had a number of different topics that he really talked about, but really addressed something that you and I had not talked about and hadn't really thought about. But that's the fact that Texas, for the first time in a while, is actually undefeated. First time in Sark's history as coach, 4-year tenure in Austin, that the Longhorns are undefeated at the outset. We'll hear more from you, CJ, but first let's hear from our coach, Steve Sarkisian.
Everybody would probably agree there's nothing like going into a bye, coming off of a win as an undefeated team. You know, that's always something that you strive for. And this actually, ironically, is the first year we've gone into a bye undefeated. Our previous buys, we've kind of lost the week before going into the bye. I was reminded of that. One of our younger analysts on staff that we need to win this week so we can have a bye where we're happy and we've won going into the bye. So that was positive.
Yeah, it's good stuff. CJ, he also talked about Steve Sarkisian talked about what the plans were and the schedule was for the bye week. We got asked that this morning on Coffee and Football and did not have a good answer. Thankfully, Sark responded to that question that came in. What's the game plan for this week for Texas, CJ?
Yeah, so Texas was off today. They had some film position meetings. Each side of the ball had their overall meetings as well this morning. They lifted today. They'll be back on the practice field Tuesday and Wednesday. They'll start going over and getting into some of the Oklahoma game plan and schemes for that game coming up in 2 weeks. They'll practice again on Thursday, and then they will be off Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. A lot of players that are from the area, from the state of Texas, will be going home, meeting up with family. Sarkisian says this is a great opportunity for them, not just to get healthy, but to kind of kick back and unwind a little bit, right? You know, and with the way that this schedule's set up and with the way that this path to the national championship is set up, you're not even a third of the way through the potential games that you could be playing this season. Sarkisian says it's a great opportunity, again, for this team to just kind of sit back and relax and refresh, I think is the word that he actually used, to, you know, allow them to come back ready to focus and get ready to go right on into Oklahoma and Dallas.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. He talked about the injury situation at Texas, which he said, other than quarterback and running back, has been very, very good for the Longhorns. But he said, so we need to get healthy and rest, but we also need some mental health rest a little bit here too. I mean, it's been a little taxing, 5 games straight back to back, et cetera. He said he wants the guys to feel that joy and that love for football again. And sometimes taking a week off can help give your guys that kind of impetus and that momentum and when they need it. And perhaps that's part of the whole idea here for Sarkisian. He also had a little bit to say about Jaden Blue, the running back out of Klein Kane that had 2 fumbles on Saturday. CJ, he did not, take Jaden Blue to task, but he talked about how he dealt with situations like a running back having 2 fumbles in the game.
Yeah, and I think it spoke to Jaden Blue's maturity, right? We talked about it earlier, Bobby. He was out talking to the media after the game, and that, again, is that sign of, mental maturation from Jaden Blue, a guy who I think even admitted himself after the game that he probably wouldn't have been in a spot like this to come speak with media folks after the game, and if this had happened earlier in his career. But he credits Jonathan Brooks. He credits Bijan Robinson, Roschon Johnson, Keelan Robinson, all these guys that have made this Texas running back room so special in the past for helping Jaden Blue be a part of this team. And he's a big one, right? And Sarkisian continues to pound the drum. He's not going away from using Jaden Blue in the way that we've seen so far this season. Texas needs a Jaden Blue. They put it simply. You don't have many options in this running back room, and none of them quite possess the speed or the explosiveness that you see with a Jaden Blue. So, and it's one thing, right? It's not a mental error, right? It's physical, and you can correct those physical things. It's no guarantee that these physical, mistakes or corrections will occur again. It's all about getting the confidence ready to go again for Jaden Blue moving forward. And again, Sarkisian's not shying away from going out and saying that he's going to be a big part of this offense for the remainder of the year.
One of the things I liked that Sark said today, CJ, and I know you took note of it, Jaden Blue showed some maturity, like you said, and after the fumbles and came out and talked to the media. He said, look, that's what we try to teach guys here, that, you have to be accountable for your actions, go out and be a man about it. He goes, look, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we were up in Lubbock and Bijan Robinson fumbled in the overtime. He said Bijan went out there and talked to the media. That's what they're trying to teach these guys. Everything's not going to be sunshine and roses every single day as a football player. Hey, another good note that I want to talk about, Kelvin Banks, a young man, offensive lineman, has now won or just was named the SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week, CJ. Longhorn offensive line unit seems to be racking up some awards right now. Sark talked a little bit about that today.
Absolutely. And how could you not like this start from the offensive line right now? We're 5 weeks into the season. 3 Longhorns already on the offensive line have received SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week honors. It was Cam Williams against Colorado State. It was Jake Majors against Michigan. And again, back on the board, if you will, for the Texas Longhorns and Kyle Flood's unit, with Kelvin Banks receiving the honor after, the SEC opener against Mississippi State. 3 out of 5 weeks. That's not too bad right there. One thing I did want to note on the running back conversation with, some talk about the offensive line thrown in here, Bobby, is Sarkisian said, yeah, we felt good about what we did in the second half of that game in the running game, right? Texas ended up just south of 200 yards rushing. They only had 10 in the first half, but you saw them start turning it together, and a lot of that due to the efforts by Trey Wisner late in that game as well. But when that is the case, Texas becomes very difficult to defend. It's a very balanced attack. Texas is averaging north of 300 passing yards a game and right around 200. If you're doing that, that is very difficult to defend right now. And the next step in the running game, obviously, with this a veteran offensive line, is getting to the second level to allow those 5 to 6 yard gains turn into 15 to 20 and beyond. The next point in that is getting the wide receivers more involved down the field and in blocking. Sarkisian singled out DeAndre Moore on that 38-yard Trey Wisner run as a big part of why Texas was able to get down the field and create some explosive plays there. Of course, and we'll talk about penalties here in a bit, but if you're able to negate those and keep that running game going, that's going to be a big part of the Texas success offensively moving forward.
One thing he did say about the offensive line in the run game, he wants it to be more consistent. That was the one takeaway I got from that, beyond, as you mentioned, DeAndre Moore and his block that kind of sprung Trey Wisner for an extra 15 yards. It went from a 20-yard gain to a 35-plus yard gain because downfield blocking by DeAndre Moore, who then later in that same series gets a touchdown catch. And Sark's like, kind of, you make your own opportunities, right? And DeAndre Moore is making his own opportunity right now. All right, let's go to quarterback, if you don't mind, CJ. We really need to do that. The status of Quinn, and then we need to talk about his comments on Arch as well. What is Quinn's status for OU?
Yeah, it says Quinn's certainly taking the right steps to be back out on the field. The big part here, no setbacks have been suffered by Quinn, and which is very important when you deal with, kind of a core injury that was more a non-contact initiated bug for Ewers to initially have suffered. Right now, positive steps in the right direction. He will practice again this week. It will be a light week for everybody involved, but we'll see really next Monday, around this time next Monday, what that overall status will be for Quinn Ewers. I was told this weekend after the game Mississippi State, it took a lot out of Quinn to not be able to go this weekend. And, we saw the 70% notion put on Quinn from Pete Thamel from ESPN in his report that he wouldn't be able to play. If so, I think he was a healthy 70% because Ewers wanted to be out there, I would say.
Yeah, he didn't look encumbered at all on the sideline when he was raising his hands above his head, twisting around, talking. He was clearly engaged, and I don't think 70% is as much the truth as, hey, let's be on the safe side of this thing.
Exactly.
And get it going. Yeah.
And to that point again, Bobby, Sarkisian mentioned we're 5 games into what could be a 15 or a 16 game season. If that's going to be something that potentially lingers, stay on the sideline, get fully healthy, and let's not let this become anything more than what it has been.
All right, before we get to Arch and the penalties and maybe a little bit about defensive talk, we want to say thank you to our sponsor. This episode of On Texas Football brought to you by our friends over at South Point Dodge. Score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has over 600 vehicles in stock, and their award-winning sales staff doesn't do games or gimmicks. They just get straight to the point by getting you the very best deal possible. So score big today at South Point Dodge. Come see us off I-35 in South Austin or at southpointdodge.com. Get to the point at South Point Dodge. Austin's automotive everything. Looking to sell your car? Get South Point Dodge's best offer over the phone or online. Thanks to those folks for sponsoring On Texas Football there at South Point Dodge. All right, CJ, sounds like you got moved into a wind tunnel there a little bit on this one. But let's talk a little bit about what Steve Sarkisian had to say about Arch Manning. I thought it was very interesting because a lot of people have now seen the tweet, the post-game tweet, where Sark talked about, quote, ripping Arch's ass a little bit on the sidelines. Everybody was kind of curious. Well, what do you mean by that? Guy just went 26 of 31 for 324. Didn't put the ball in harm's way, had a couple of big throws. Sark explained himself. Give it to the fans exactly what Sark was, one of the things that he was letting Quinn know about.
Yeah, it was quite the coaching moment, actually. And, when you hear Sarkisian describe it about what that conversation was to Arch Manning, it makes total sense. And it was frustrating for Sarkisian. It was frustrating for the offense. It was frustrating for everybody watching the game because it took probably 10 minutes off of what was pretty fast-moving game at the time, but following the 27-yard scamper to the end zone, obviously that play was reviewed. Texas tried to punch it in with Trey Wisener. That play was reviewed. It didn't get in, and then you saw two quarterback sneak attempts. First was unsuccessful. The second one was successful. The reason why that first QB sneak was unsuccessful, well, Arch Manning, I think out of pure excitement for what he thought was a touchdown, got up pretty early, and as the line judges came in to spot the football and declared either short of the goal line or indicate a touchdown, Arch was already standing up, ready to celebrate. And as a result, I don't think that there was a clear view of where his body was, where the football was, and what was going on that actual play. So for Sarkisian, that next play, what did he do? I said, yeah. During the helmet communication, which is very valuable now, said, Arch, when you're in the pile for a QB sneak, stay down, keep moving forward, let them see where your body is, because that's the only way that they can tell in a scrum where the ball is, what the situation is, were you in the end zone and whatnot, and what happened in the next play. Well, Arch stayed down on the ground, and he was rewarded with the touchdown. But that's kind of where you saw the conversation with Sark and Manning, occur after that play. The cameras caught it coming over to the sideline, and it's just a great coaching moment from Sarkisian and a great learning moment for Arch Manning in this situation.
Yeah, it wasn't about, and this is what's interesting, it wasn't about anything that had to do with reads or where to go with the football. It was just, this is experience. This is what you do with experience, and why experience actually matters. Just stay down and be given the touchdown rather than getting up too quickly. Funny stuff, because I think a lot of people are like, how are you picking on this guy for going 26 of 31? When in reality, you hear what he's talking about. It's, look, it may have, if that would have been fourth down, that would have been a difficult situation there. So thankfully, that did not come back to hurt anybody. All right, CJ, Sark also very pleased, I think, overall with where this defense is right now. Tell folks what Sark had to say there.
So listen, you've allowed 3 touchdowns in 5 games. You're averaging 7 points per game defensively. You can't be too upset with what's going on right now. However, there's still ways for this team to clean up what's happening on the defensive side of the ball. He said run defense specifically. A few of those runs that were able to kind of squeak out of the front 7 and become explosive plays for Mississippi State were the results of misalignment and missed assignments. And you're going to hear that often. It's a lot of coach speak, but there were several times where the Texas edges did not actually set the edge. And as a result, they were kind of washed down and plays were able to leak out of the front side for Mississippi State to pick up chunk yardage. And for the linebackers, again, this is maybe the second week in a row where we could talk about, Bobby, maybe they're too quick, if you will, to, kind of jet upfield and hit a hole, and at times that's great because we see David Benda and Anthony Hill making plays behind the line of scrimmage, but when they read incorrectly, it creates a void in that Texas run gap. And we saw that on the one touchdown scamper by Michael Van Buren. Right now, he said, if you're able to clean that up, then Texas did a pretty fine job after that first drive. Mississippi State only averaged about 2.5 yards per carry after that first drive. And I think you'll take that 10 times out of 10 if you're playing an SEC opponent right there. So at the end of the day, it was a solid showing by the Texas Longhorn defensively. You allow one touchdown, only 13 points, but it can certainly get better, and that's the point of emphasis going into Oklahoma.
He was also asked, Sark was also asked about super freshman Colin Simmons, and I think it's fair that we can officially call him super freshman Colin Simmons because he's playing like that right now. Two sacks on Saturday. Sark also mentioning Barron Sorrell with 2 sacks, Colton Vosick getting at it. But here is one of the more incredible stats, in my opinion, is Colin Simmons already has 4 sacks so far this year. He's on the cusp, or it looks like he's going to at least challenge CJ, the all-time freshman leader in sacks at the University of Texas. Earl Campbell's brother, Tim Campbell, owns that record right now with 13. Tony Bracken's first-round pick out of Fairfield, Marcus Tubbs out of DeSoto, Anthony Hill with 5 last year. Colin Simmons has already got the 9th most sacks of any true freshman at the University of Texas in Texas football history. He also has, I believe, 11 tackles for loss. So he's getting after it right now. What did Sark have to say about Colin Simmons?
Well, he says, there's a few characteristics or traits that you come across whenever you're recruiting guys that you can describe as God-given gift. And right now, he says that was absolutely evident when you evaluated Colin Simmons out of high school, and you're seeing it on display right now. His ability and his quickness to get off the edge and make life difficult for opposing quarterbacks. Well, again, Sarkisian said it's only described as a God-given gift, and we're seeing the results of that right now. Obviously, 4 sacks. He leads all true freshmen in sacks, pressures, third in tackles, leads the country for true freshman edges in run stops as well. There was a drive in that second quarter with Mississippi State going into the north end of the end zone where there are 3 straight run plays and 3 straight tackles made by Colin Simmons, and it was basically him just flying around the football. We also saw the most snaps that we've seen from Colin Simmons this year, 41, and that's almost doubling up in Ethan Burke. That's up there right now with the Barron Sorrell as the most snaps on the Texas defense from an edge defender, and it's warranted, right? We're seeing the sack numbers. We're seeing the impact. We're seeing the pressure. It's living up to the 5-star expectation and then some. So, yeah, I guess we are on freshman sack record watch, if you will, moving forward.
Yeah, they're going to play. I mean, he was asked, it was very funny. He was asked whether or not his coaching led to Colin Simmons' athleticism off the ball. And he's like, look, I can take credit for a lot of things in life. That was not one of them. Colin Simmons got a lot of special ability right there. Overall, I kind of took the big piece notes together, CJ, and put them all together. And I sum it up. I think Sark's looking for rest, both physically and mentally, in this bye week. They're also going to get on the road and recruit a little bit. And then he said Quinn with no setbacks. Those are kind of the priorities right now that they look like to me. The one last thing I did want to mention is he talked a little bit about penalties and that he felt they need to clean those up. 8 penalties, just too many.
Yeah, it absolutely is, especially when 5 of them are holding, right? You're taking away chunk plays. And for the second time this year, Bobby, we've seen a touchdown negated because of a holding penalty. And a lot of it is, just excitement. The Texas team trying to be aggressive, trying to allow Texas to create a longer play on the edge. And when that happens and you see them change direction, when you see guys get outside, it's tough to then be upset because they're trying to create a play. But right now, 8 penalties on the offensive side of the ball. We can talk about the pre-snaps, the false starts, the snap infractions. That can get cleaned up. What needs to be cleaned up is 5 holding calls because that's going to be something that hinders Texas against better opponents much more significantly.
Yep. All right. That's going to do it. CJ, you're there at DKR for Steve Sarkisian press conference today. Thank you for this report. We'll have more from CJ as well as Rod Babers and Bob Shipley today at the Winning Drive, starting up around 3 o'clock. Thanks again to our sponsor, South Point Dodge, for making all this possible. For CJ Vogel, as well as our producer behind the scenes, Matt Hutchison, I'm Bobby Burton. You guys have a good afternoon. Texas 5-0, ranked number 2 in the country. Hook 'em.